Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to the Friel Thing podcast with me, Greg Friel. Okay, folks, I have a very special guest. As all of my guests are super special and lovely, and all very welcome here. I just met Liza last week, and I was like, oh, I need to talk to this lady. She's got stories to tell. She is an author, and 4 books so far, yes?
Yes, 4.
We're just going to dive straight into this. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with Liza Miles. Yay! Very welcome, Liza. For a quick 30 seconds for the folks at home on who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay. So I'm Liza Miles. I am now an author. I have written 4 books. And I'm actually today, just before the interview, I was starting on my 5th, which is another young adult fiction. I have a background as a documentary filmmaker, spent time in advertising production, lived in the States, lived in Canada, moved back to Scotland, and I'm also a certified family mediator and art therapist.
We don't have the kind of time to go into all this. I'm like, whoa, there's a lot there.
I'm very old.
Not true at all. Not true at all. Because I was just going to say, oh, right, okay, we've got a lot in common here. Because I spent some time growing up in the States when I was just a lad, and my brothers live in Canada, so there's that connection as well. And I do video and all sorts of media stuff. So we're going to have to try and keep this short.
Sure. No worries.
But I'm sure, there'll be 1,001 stories that we could go into. So what took you to where you are right now? You're, an author.
Yes.
And young adult fiction, is that where we're sort of couching?
Well, 2 things. I do young adult fiction, and I'm also doing a cozy mystery series. So cozy mystery set in Edinburgh. I call it cozy because it's about a fairly complicated woman.
Okay.
She's not the sort of traditional female housewifey sleuth. She's a bit more complicated than that. Has a sort of background of some slightly sleazy things that happened to her and that she participated in. But then my young adult fiction. So because I've worked as a counselor and family mediator. And I've always been really fascinated by what makes people tick. I like books that are character driven. So I don't do blood and gore. I don't do swearing, but I do gritty situations. So people find themselves in difficult situations.
Right. So you bring the realism there so that, it's grounded in realism, but it's like we don't actually have to swear and kind of go into blood and gore to actually convey the story.
Yeah. So bodies are found, several. But we don't describe, what's actually happened to them.
Dare I go as far as to say it? And this is where you're perfectly within your rights to shout at me, for me to make assumptions. But in my head, I'm kind of thinking Columbo or Murder, She Wrote, or the daytime kind of sleuth type thing, where it's not in the evening and we get the blood and gore and swearing and all this kind of stuff. This is it's a slightly more genteel approach. Would you say that would be?
It's genteel with edge, I would say.
Right.
So
okay.
A little bit, because we're now in 2021, so people do expect a little bit more than they would have done. And certainly her character is not like Jessica. She is Rose is a very modern woman. She's exploring her own sexuality. She's independent. She spent some time in prison thanks to her ex-lover. So
Wow, okay.
she's got edge to her.
Layers.
But certainly like Columbo, it would seem like she's finding her way through as an amateur sleuth. But she gets there, right? She gets there. She gets there by making maps. Because one of the other things that's happened to her, she used to be she used to be a pilot in the RAF, and
Right,
she wanted to go into space, but she has macular degeneration, so she's blind in one eye.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so that's quite a lot about her, I suppose.
I was just going to say, you're really kind of layering on thick with this poor woman. She's got loads to deal with here, loads of baggage. So you've got these books, and that character's Rose McLaren. Am I right?
Rose McLaren, yes,
Right.
Rose McLaren.
So you have a series of books with Rose. Am I right? And so
Yeah, so
there's two so far.
two so far. Well, Murder on Morrison is currently out and available,
Hmm.
and A Game of Murder is being launched on August the 1st. Will be the publication day.
But
So
this is part of like a longer like saga that you're planning on doing here. This is
yeah,
kind of
I
like
have.
your Harry Potter legacy, right?
Yes, I have six planned. It's kind of interesting because I'm all like lots of writers, I'm always mining for information.
Yeah, yeah.
So recently I was on a train down to England to see some friends when we were all sort of unlocked, as it
Hmm.
were. And I got into conversation with a fellow sort of sitting in the same carriage, and he was a diver, but he lives in a cage with this dive. It's a special type of diving that he does,
He
and he's
lives in a cage.
yeah, when he's diving,
Oh, when
he
he's diving. Right?
he
I
might
thought
be.
you meant he just generally lived in a
No,
cage.
he
Like they
didn't come
feed
on the
him through
train
the
with a
cage.
cage.
Right. Okay. I thought it was like
That would be very
interesting.
graphic, yeah.
Hmm.
But so I was like, oh, that would be a really interesting murder mystery. And his eyes lit up, and he said, yeah, he said, I've been in a 3 month diving situation. There have been six of us. So three are out diving, three are there. Then the three of us go out diving. He said, and sometimes in those situations, you do feel like murdering somebody. So you never know. That might be in a book too.
Hmm. I mean, I think whenever I meet fellow creatives, I think we gravitate towards the same things. We're people watchers, and we're watching what's happening all around us. And I don't know about you, but I'll sit in a cafe or just be walking down the street and see people and imagine all sorts of scenarios in my head. Oh, all right, they're on a second date, and all this kind of stuff, and just kind of imagine what their occupation is and all that side of things. Presumably, I mean, this is like an occupational hazard with yourself.
It is, unfortunately.
Hmm.
So oftentimes my daughter will be saying, Mum, why do you get into conversations with everybody? I said, well, because
It's
we might appear
fascinating.
as a character in one of my stories.
Hmm.
You never know.
You absolutely never know, and I mean, and that's the thing. It could just be a turn of phrase that somebody uses or something like that you kind of go, oh,
Yeah,
I quite like that line, and then it just sparks all of
yeah,
this other stuff.
yeah.
So
Well, the way
let's go
people
back.
move, the way that, just like body expressions,
Yeah.
oftentimes it's really interesting because you think, oh, the character that I'm writing about kind of moves like that. So,
Hmm.
they become a study. It's not like you're borrowing from people or stealing from them. It's just that you're observing and yeah.
Hmm.
So
Stealing,
fascinating.
um,
No, not stealing, borrowing.
of course. Um, I won't tell anyone. Right. So let's go back to your first book, which I believe was Love Bites.
Yes.
Now, this isn't one of the murder mystery ones. This is something completely different. Yes.
Yeah, this is seven short stories.
Hmm.
One of the stories, and I won't confess to which one, is autobiographical.
Ooh.
And the other stories are all complete fiction. Um,
Okay.
and
Are they
they're
all about serial killing? I mean, this is what we
no,
need to know here. It's kind of like they're autobiographical. I'm just not telling you where the bodies are. Yeah. Right. Okay.
no, no, no. There are a couple of murders in Love
Okay.
Bites. There's one story which happens during the pandemic, which is a very sensitive story about an older couple. And there's a couple of other love stories. So they're all based on intimate partner relationships.
Right.
And I would say the good, the bad, and the ugly of intimate partner relationships.
Sorry, something you just said there. I'm like, hold on a minute. You said set during the pandemic, and that was your first book. So, are you telling me that you've written 4 books since the start of the pandemic?
Yeah.
Okay. Are they really short books?
No, well, no, not really short. I mean, Love
Right.
Bites is, seven short stories,
Yeah.
and the others are all between about 60,000 words. Yeah,
Wow.
so they're not short. They're not long, but when the pandemic hit, so I'd been practicing as a family mediator here in Scotland,
Right.
came back from Canada, set up as a family mediator, and I was planning to write. I've been planning to write for years, but one thing or another, you
Sure.
know, cancer, children, everything got in the way. So I thought, well, now I'm here, I can write. So joined some writing groups, and then when the pandemic hit, I thought, well, I can't mediate from my flat. It would be very difficult. And I don't feel comfortable doing it online. I did a couple online, and I just didn't think it was the right thing to do. So I thought, well, I've been asking for the gift of time to write, and now I have it. So I picked up my pen and my computer and my endless notebooks, and I haven't stopped. And all the stories have been flooding out. Yeah.
That's something I've noticed on your social media, and again, something that we have in common is countless notebooks. I am obsessed with blank stationery, and there's just piles and piles of these books, and I don't know. I think it's just full of possibilities.
Yeah.
It's just like there's nothing there. It's the blank canvas, and you can have like, oh, and then you might get a really, really nice notebook with it. I'll save that for something really, really good.
Yeah.
And I end up just scribbling absolute piles of shite in it instead. Uh,
But
but
that shite will turn into a story. I tell you, it
you
will.
never know. You never know. So yeah, so that's a hell of a work ethic in terms of just. Do you have a set regime that you kind of like? Okay, between 8 o'clock and 10, I'm going to do 2 hours of writing, and then I'm going to have a break, and or do you just write when it takes you, or just are you very, very structured and organized?
Yeah, I wish I could say I was structured and organized, but mostly what happens, because I do have a part-time job, I train for an organization 15 hours a week. So normally I'd be going out to organizations to do the training, but of course I'm doing it from home.
Hmm.
So normally what happens is at 6 in the morning when my youngest cat just says it's time for food, I don't put on the radio. So I used to be a news junkie, and
Right.
I couldn't bear it anymore. I couldn't bear all the sort of waffle and lies,
Absolutely.
basically.
Yeah.
So at 6 o'clock in the morning, I fed the cats. I make a big cup of tea, and I sit either in bed or on my sofa or on my dining table, and I'll write for maybe a couple of hours if it's a work training day.
Hmm.
If it's not a work training day, I could be here until noon and then get up and move around and then come back to it in the afternoon. Yeah.
How objective are you with your own writing? Do you kind of write pages and pages and pages, and then okay, that's good, that's fine, that's fine, or are you kind of self-editing along the way?
I self-edit, I do. So if I've written a couple of thousand words, on Tuesday, I'll give it till Thursday and uh, read it. I may keep some, I may dump some, I may dump the whole lot. I may just sort of, move it all around or think, I'm not sure. So some days it's like, oh, I'll read that was really good. That was really good. So I try not to edit in the moment because that's never a good thing. But I do work with an editor. So after the story's finished, I've had a couple of beta readers go through it, usually whilst I'm writing, and they give me feedback while I'm writing, and then I pay a woman called Mary Turner Thompson, who's an author herself, and then she does the sort of, uh, real sort of hard-nosed editing, if you like, and tells
Yeah.
me if it's crap or if it's okay.
Or that doesn't seem quite right when that character does that, and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
and
Yeah.
she'll help me move things around, or she'll ask me questions, like because the other thing I do, because I'm often writing very quickly in my head, I know what's happened, and then she'll say, The reader needs to know what's going on
Hmm.
here. Even one line will help us transition.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've learned. Yeah.
Whenever you're starting a new book, do you have a general outline or structure? Or are you somebody that's kind of like you map out the whole structure, and you kind of go down to beginning, middle, and an end, and you've got chapters, or is it something that happens just kind of it's a free flowing organic thing, and you're like, yeah, kind of have an idea about what I'm write about, but it's not fully formed?
It's not
What's
fully formed. It's really
okay?
organic and told by the characters. And interestingly, what happened with A Game of Murder was I started writing A Game of Murder, and I thought, I'm going to plan this a little bit better. I'm actually going to sort of plan it out. So I planned it out and I had all the sort of, this is what's going to happen and this is the main storyline.
Hmm.
And then in the middle of it all, I had a diagnosis for breast cancer.
Right.
Oh, yes, that's not so good. So I had to take a break. And then when I went back to it, I thought, this is just rubbish. I mean, I like the premise. I like that it's set at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Hmm.
And all the characters kind of like they weren't speaking to me. It was as if they'd all, folded their arms and said, well, we don't like this either. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
This is our second outing. You better not screw this up.
Hmm.
So I had to go back to the beginning and listen to them, and then I rewrote it. And it's a
Did
much
you
better book.
literally just bin everything you had and start again? It was
Pretty much, yeah, pretty
yeah.
much, yeah.
Hmm.
And then I wrote it really quickly. It
Yeah.
was amazing because then it flowed. But it was because and then I got to kind of a part of it, and I thought I don't know what the ending is, and they all said it's because we know what the ending is, but we're not going to tell you.
Hmm.
You have to ask more questions. So I then become like the sleuth and I'm asking questions and then I'm writing. Yeah.
Yeah, and then kind
So,
of the
yeah.
ending reveals itself.
The ending reveals itself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's go way back. I mean, we said at the start that you've done a bit of traveling.
Yes.
You've been in the States and Canada. In your previous life, documentary filmmaking.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that was a wonderful part of my life actually. I worked for I was working for the BBC and working in on the Children in Need program
Hmm.
and um, uh, I wrote a sort of an idea for a documentary, which I took to my boss at the Beeb, and he said, "Send it down to Television South." And the story was about Romania and what was going on. So Romania at that time, this was pre 1989, before everything fell down
Hmm.
and opened up. So I had read about some young men going into Romania and smuggling equipment to a priest in Timișoara. And so I sent it to TVS and they loved it and said, yes, go out to Romania and make the documentary. Well, I'd never made a documentary in my life. So I said, okay then. Off I went with my little
Hmm.
camera, hiding in the back of this van where these guys were smuggling things into Timișoara.
Wow.
And then TVS hired me and they trained me to make documentaries. So I worked with them on a program called Highway with Harry Seacombe. You're way too young to remember that
I
program.
actually remember it. I do know the program you're talking. Yeah.
That was working with Harry Seacombe was amazing. It really was.
Absolute legend. Yeah.
He was a real sweetheart. He really was, and very kind to me. And so then I made several other documentaries for Television South. They were called The Human Factor. So they were human interest stories.
Hmm.
I went out to Africa, went to various other places, but a lot were made in the UK about different people. Helen Shapiro, I made her story,
Hmm.
and which she loved. She said it was one of the best things that anybody had done about her. So, yeah.
So how long did you do that for?
I did that until Mrs. Thatcher ended my career.
Okay, a little bit of politics, a little bit of edge.
Well,
Uh-huh.
the woman, that woman.
Uh-huh.
What was interesting was I actually sang in a church choir at St Michael's Chester Square, and she lived in Chester Square in London, and she came to
Right.
that church. And so what she was doing, she was really angry with the ITV networks because they'd released a documentary about Gibraltar,
Right.
and I think it was called Death on the Rock or something.
Yes, I remember. Yes, I
Yeah,
remember.
you
Very
remember
famous. Yeah.
that. And so she decided to bring her axe down on the ITV networks. and the ITV networks had to bid for their franchises, and TVS lost its franchise basically.
I see.
Yeah. So that was interesting. So I did do some freelancing in the TV world
Mm-hmm.
as a researcher, but I found not working within the sort of department and having the
Mm-hmm.
support and the mentoring,
Yeah.
I found it like swimming with sharks, to be honest with you, and I didn't really like it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think all of the media is a bit like that.
Mm,
It's nice to have the backup of, an organization there,
yeah,
and the people there in the back rooms to kind of having that support structure.
absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
Whereas, like you say, whenever you're out there on your own, you're kind of like, who do I trust? Who
Yeah.
are the people I can really rely on?
Yeah. Yeah.
So after that period, what was next for you after that?
I had well, I was making a program at Parkhurst Prison. It was one of the last things that I worked on with Highway, and when I went into the prison, I met an art therapist, and I have to confess, I was a bit left politically, but I was a bit right when it came to people in prison because I thought they were very all going to be very scary. And going into Parkhurst and meeting the art therapist and meeting several amazing and very talented young men in the
Hmm.
prison who had gone through the art therapy program and learning about their lives, I decided that looks like a really interesting career. So I went to a school in London and did a master or postgraduate diploma in expressive arts therapy and set up a charitable trust in London. And we worked in 5 of the UK London prisons,
Wow.
offering art therapy, expressive arts therapy. So yeah, and then I went off to Canada and
Then you went
did
off to
some
Canada.
did sort of
Whereabouts in Canada were you?
I was in British Columbia in a place called Victoria on Vancouver Island, which
Right.
is the jewel in the crown. It's just
Hmm.
gorgeous,
Hmm.
absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, my brothers are in Toronto, um, but I actually haven't been to British Columbia. I think it's something I'd really like to.
You should go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
No,
definitely the place
absolutely.
to be.
So how long were you in Canada for?
I was there for 21 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Okay, because I can hear
a little bit of Canadian.
a little bit of Canadian in your outs and abouts. Absolutely. So you came back here.
Yeah,
Where does this coincide with the start of your sort of your current circumstances and what you're doing,
of
writing
writing.
with? Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, as I say, when I came back in 2017, my plan was, okay, I'm no longer a single mum raising 2 daughters. I'll move back to Scotland. My youngest daughter is actually over in the UK, and she's going to Stirling Uni to study psychology. So I said, okay, I'll work part time, and then I'll write. And then, of course, I set up the mediation practice, which took a bit of time to develop and build. So it was finally when the pandemic hit, it's like, why am I faffing around? Why am I, sort of putting off what I came to do?
Hmm.
So I'm actually now enrolled at Stirling University myself on the
All
MLit
right. Okay.
program for writing. So my daughter's not happy that her mum's
Of
going to
course
the
not.
same
No,
university as
you'll
she
be
is.
totally cramping her style. Absolutely.
I'll just be more fun, actually.
It's the worst possible situation. So why are you here, Mum?
There's my mother in the bar. Oh my God.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. So on your current journey now, as an author, we said before, you're planning on writing a series of these murder mystery novels.
Yeah.
Now I know that you're kind of quite free form in terms of your actual writing a particular book, but do you have a general outline and an idea of where you're taking the character over those six books?
I do. I mean, certainly her struggle with her eye condition is something that she has to grapple with. She also has to grapple with a quite complicated relationship with her father.
Hmm.
Her father was always disappointed in her because he'd wanted a boy, she was a girl, and then of course
Right.
she did all the things that he didn't want her to do. She joined the RAF as opposed to working for him in his mechanical car fixing garage.
Yeah.
So as I say, because I'm very character driven, I build into the story all about the relationships that happen. She's also exploring her sexuality throughout the books as well, and deciding if she is heterosexual or homosexual or asexual.
Yeah.
She's not quite sure. Yeah.
Well, obviously, an extremely contemporary, um, look at the world,
Yeah.
especially for young adults
Mhm.
at the moment. So, going forward, I mean, are you thinking I've got these books? Is there something else? I always think of writers, like some of my favorite writers, like Anne Rice is a favorite writer of mine, and Ian Rankin, who I love.
I love Ian
Um,
Rankin. He's replying
yeah,
to my tweets at the moment.
he just seems like a really cool guy,
Such a
doesn't he? He
nice
just
man.
yeah. Um, and he's just, I love the way he writes characters,
Yeah.
and dialogue. It's so natural.
Yeah.
It's very much that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Is that something that you would like to do? And look, with Ian Rankin, obviously he's got the character of Rebus, and which is just going on and on. And the thing that's fascinating with that character is that it's 20, at least 20, 25 years, is it now?
Yeah, easily. Yeah.
And just to be able to see that character growing old and then changing, all of the relationships around him and all that kind of stuff. There's the familiarity of all the characters that fly in and out. Is that something that interests you going forward? I mean, I know you're saying you've got these 6 books, but maybe is this maybe your flagship character for these, for maybe other books going forward, or is there something else beyond that, or do you just not know at this stage?
So I think with Rose, I don't know how, I mean, I'm sort of saying that there'll be 6 because I have the 6 stories in my mind, and it may be that there is more of Rose. The book series that I'm just starting today, actually, well, not today, but the other day I started plotting it
You
out.
should have been writing today.
I have been writing, and then I took myself off for lunch. Oops.
Oops. Yeah.
So Daisy is a young girl. She's 12 when we first meet her. And these are stories for young people, but they could also be for adults and will have, so some fantasy, but the problems that she deals with in the fantasy, as well as the issue of her own very, very sort of odd family who are her mum and dad are academics, so
Hmm.
no, very little warmth. Um,
Right.
but she finds her way. So she is a very strong protagonist. So I'm hoping that will encourage young girls to think, yeah, I can find my way through difficult situations
Hmm.
and stand up to danger,
Now,
which is what the protagonist in My Life's Not Funny does as well. Yeah.
right. Okay. Now, Lisa, you're somebody who's very supportive of other writers,
Mm.
and now is this through a podcast that you do, or is it a radio show, or what's the format?
So I do writers read, and so we do it actually on Zoom. I
Hmm.
usually have 2 writers come on and read from their work, and then I just chat to them in front of the Zoom audience about how why they write, what they love to write, and just give them some exposure. I really started that because I felt that there are a lot of independent authors as well as the more well-known ones. So I have a mixture of well-known and independent authors. So I wanted to give a platform to people who
Hmm.
don't get on mainstream media and get their stories out there as well.
Excellent. Obviously, I'll be annoying you about that because my brother wrote a book last year.
Yeah,
So you need to talk to him.
I
Obviously,
would be happy to talk to him. Absolutely.
obviously, it's going to happen. You don't actually really get to say no. It's
There's
just
no choice
no.
to
There's
it.
just
It's
no.
okay. Right.
Lisa, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. I know it's a glorious sunny day, and we're trying to make the most of the weather while it lasts because it never will. Um,
Absolutely.
No, no, there's no guarantees
This
at
is
all.
Scotland.
But thank you so much for joining me today, and best of luck with A Game of Murder when it
Thank
comes
you.
out, and I'll make sure that I plug that as much as I can.
Wonderful.
And
Thank you.
I shall talk to you soon. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, lovely, and have a blessed afternoon. And I'm going to head out for a cup of tea or a white wine spritzer. Who knows?
I'd go for the latter.
Okay, bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.